Good morning, everyone. We need to get started. We had a long executive committee meeting that went a little over, so I apologize if everyone could make their way to their seats. What is this?
So that's the person to call up if there's questions on AAA.
Okay. We're out of coffee? All right, we are 5 minutes past our start time, which is very unusual for this crew. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order for Thursday, November 18th, Kent County Board of Commissioners. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Commissioners Green.
Here.
Antor.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Vice Chair Steck.
Here.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl.
Here.
Coleman.
Here.
Freeby.
Here.
Teal.
Here.
Sparks. McLeod.
Here.
Hennessy.
Here.
LeGrand.
Here.
Bulkowski.
Present.
Womack.
Here.
Wooden.
Here.
Skaggs.
Here.
Chair Bolter.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 18 members present, 1 absent. You have a quorum.
All right, we're on to invocation, and I'd like to call on Commissioner Green for the invocation today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we gather to attend to the business of our community, Kent County. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion and allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that affect the residents of our county. We ask that you grant us your wisdom so that we may do what is best for our community now and in the future. We also ask that you continue to remind us that all we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth, for the greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are on to item 5, special order of business today. We've got 2 former commissioners here with us. I'd like to call up President of Grand Rapids Whitewater, Steve Heacock, as well as Sandy Frost Steensma and Matt Chapman for our Whitewater presentation.
Former board chair.
And former board chair.
Thank you
2
so much,
former
Chair.
board chairs.
Yeah. Delighted to be here this morning. Glad to be asked to give this update. We're the county in we think late 2018, the agreement was penned in early 2019. Agreed to contribute $1.4 million to the Grand Rapids Whitewater project out of the Hotel Motel Tax Fund. And you started the ball rolling in a great sense, and we've done very well in fundraising beyond that, as Sandy will talk about in a minute. But we greatly appreciate that you stepped up at that time and helped kind of lead that effort. So we're going to give you a quick update. Again, I'm Steve Heacock, President and CEO of Grand Rapids Whitewater. Matt Chapman is the Chief Program Officer of Grand Rapids Whitewater. And of course, Sandy Frost Steensma, who you all likely know, is the President and CEO of Canary Consulting and has been leading that effort. Given the nature of the county's investment, we're going to focus on the economic development potential of the project, but we'll talk about it more generally too. So the first thing I want to do is just remind you of the vision of this project and what it is that we're trying to get done. And it has changed over time. I mean, initially it was a couple guys that wanted to build one wave to go play on in Grand Rapids. And it became pretty evident to the people involved that it could be more than that. That in fact we had a chance to really make a difference for the county in this large stretch of river. And in fact we have started to think about it, even though the project's basically Ann Street to Fulton Street, we've started to think about it more as Riverside to Millennial Park because we believe that's how it'll be used. The county's portion specifically in the agreement is the lower reach which is defined in the agreement as from the highway to Fulton Street. We define it really as Bridge Street to Fulton Street. But our vision then is to restore the namesake rapids. How many times have you had friends here and you go downtown and what do they ask? You know, where are the rapids, right? So we're trying to alleviate that issue. We're trying to improve habitat. I don't need to read this to you, you can see it. Recreation is hugely important. In fact, that's what drives the economic development to a great extent, as we'll talk about. And we want to improve the trails and things as well, although our emphasis is on the in-river portion. In addition, we're doing the other things mentioned, and are, at the end of the day, not in the lower reach, but the upper reach, need to replace what is a very old and collapsing lamprey barrier. We need to stop those lamprey from getting upstream. All of this, by the way, has been done as I hope and think that many things now in our county are being done with an eye to equity. We've, even though it's technical and it's about putting rocks in a river, we've made certain there was a voice of equity at the table from the beginning, so that we make certain that the contracts let and the work done and the people leading all have a sense of whole community rather than just a part of it.
Steve, and thank you, Commissioner. So I'd like to kind of just provide a little bit more details on what it is that we're actually proposing to do. As Steve mentioned, the lower reach is, we define it as Bridge Street to Fulton Street. This is the section of the river that we're actively seeking permits for right now. So we believe we've finalized the design and we're working through that permitting process. Essentially, the goal here is to remove the 4 very dangerous low-head dams that are in this reach of the river that have unfortunately claimed lives and do provide some public safety concerns. Remove those and those kind of reflecting pools, as Steve likes to refer to them, the areas in between the dam, and replace them with natural rock and boulder structures. So we've proposed 4 structures that will be built out of natural rock and boulder. That really the goal here is to diversify that flow, diversify habitat, improve fish passage, obviously make the river a safer experience, but then also provide those enhanced recreational opportunities that Steve mentioned. In the upper reach, so roughly from the highway or up to Leonard Street, this is now the Great Lakes Fishery Commission is really the lead federal agency on this portion of the project. You may recall that in April of 2019, they kicked off their formal environmental impact statement process. They are going through that. The public comments that they received through that process led them to the development of 15 different alternatives that are being considered for the replacement of the 6th Street Dam as the viable sea lamprey barrier in the Grand River. One of those alternatives is the adjustable hydraulic structure that you've probably heard us refer to in the past. That's the idea that Grand Rapids Whitewater and the city had proposed. So that is also being considered as part of that ongoing process for the upper reach. We've discussed in front of this body before and many other community presentations just the number of benefits that projects like this see. And again, we just kind of want to remind you, the more that we learn through our involvement with the Urban Waters Federal Partnership and just talking to other communities that have made investments in their riverfronts and the river corridors, that return on investment is obvious. And these cities like Austin, Texas, and Columbus, Georgia, and the Chattahoochee River, they're seeing that these rivers can become the community gathering place. They're seeing new bars, new restaurants, new hotels, new events, all of those things that are helping to maintain, the vitality of those downtown settings. We believe this project also has that. It also has opportunities for education. You've probably heard of the Public Museum and their involvement to get kids down to the river to learn about the ecology and the environment of the river. We've worked closely with a number of partners to make sure that we're really trying to maximize the benefits for everyone. Of course, we've also talked about this project being that catalyst for additional shoreline development. I think many of you are aware that there are many other projects, both privately and publicly funded, or that are proposed conceptual projects for the enhancements of the River Edge Trail System, the parks, and additional access sites. So we really think that this continued involvement in the river will help further drive that investment in the river edges.
So regarding the economic benefits themselves, and here I am getting, it's showing my age. We did have a report in 2014 from Anderson Consulting on the economic development that we've used, and it focused on tourism and the visitors that will drive the development that occurs. And they expect 250,000 to 500,000 visitors will come to Grand Rapids and Kent County for the purpose of either using or at least seeing what's happening in the river and around it. They're not absurd numbers. You draw a 4-hour circle around Grand Rapids, you get about 42 million people. 4 million of those people are kayakers. This would be the only place in the Midwest for a quality run like this one. So we think the numbers, in fact, are conservative. So that expanded recreational use ends up with an economic impact of about $15 to $20 million per year, $19 million per year, according to Anderson. We've got an updated report that DGR, Downtown Grand Rapids Inc., kindly allowed us to use from HR&A advisors. And they viewed it a little differently and looked at the one-time economic impact. So when all in on, when you do all this construction in the river, you do stuff on the shorelines, you do all this work, what does it mean? And it's about a $150 to $230 million total with about 1,300 to 2,000 jobs during that construction. And then the annual impact, meaning the operations, concessions, et cetera, they predict to be 8.2 to 12.3 million with 100 to 140 jobs, and annual wages of up to 7.2 million. Encouraging numbers. I view them, frankly, as conservative, as you've experienced with the arena. We put that in a little spot, and the predictions were much lower than they turned out to be because we really just looked at what was going to happen in the building. Well, that's true with these studies, too. They're looking at just what happens in the river and the renting of kayaks and the selling of concessions there. Well, in fact, there's going to be this multiplier effect that bounces off of it, much like the arena, the restaurants, the hotels, the residences. The fiscal impact to the county and city, the consultants also calculated and looked at just this area that's in orange here, and I apologize if it's a little hard to see. I copied this from their presentation. And they're looking at the development that will occur within that corridor and seeing that they believe it'll have a $1 million to $1.6 million incremental Kent County property tax revenue with those riverfront improvements. We, in fact, as I said earlier, expect that the project's going to stretch beyond that with respect to development. So we expect that it could be even greater than that, but it was something I thought you'd be interested in hearing.
So as I mentioned, the design for the lower reach is finalized, and we are working through the permitting process. As you can imagine, this is a very complex process. We have 7 different state and federal agencies that have some sort of regulatory authority on this permitting process. So on the federal side, we're actually working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have received the biological opinion, which is essentially the service's concurrence of our plan to mitigate and minimize impacts to endangered mussels and preserve those mussels. We are also working with the Natural Resources Conservation Service on the finalization of a watershed project plan and environmental assessment. You may have seen in the news recently that we are actually currently in an open public comment period for the mitigation plan for the cultural resources in regards to the historic preservation of the 4 low-head dams that we propose to remove. So there is an opportunity for additional public comment coming up on November 29th at 12 p.m. And there's more information on our website and the Natural Resource Conservation Service on that. On the Eagle side of things, so the state side of things, there are a multitude of state permits that are needed as well. And really the process here is to show how we've balanced all the design goals and constraints. So in each of those different bubbles, there are different goals and there are different constraints. Obviously, flooding is a huge constraint. We want to make sure that nothing that we do in the river proposes or changes anything in the flooding. We have to balance that needs for preserving endangered mussels, for protecting and improving fish habitat. Sometimes these things work against each other, so really the last 2 to 3 years of that design process has really been trying to balance these goals and objectives. We submitted the state permit application in October of last year, so just over a year ago now. And have been working with the staff from Eagle and Michigan DNR since then, really to continue to answer questions. They had some additional requests for additional information and analysis, which we've provided and are working with them. So our goal is to hopefully get an administratively complete application here very soon, which would then move us into the formal state permitting process, which again, there will be at least 1, maybe 2 different public comment periods associated with that.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. Always love coming to the County Commission. feels like home. I like that. So one of the things that's been really interesting about this project really from the very beginning is even when we did the feasibility study about 4 or 5 years ago, which is when we go out and test whether or not there's philanthropic support and public support for this. We were even asked back then, you know, are you sure you're going to be able to get the public support? Because it seemed like everybody was pretty confident of the philanthropic support, but not the public support. Well, as it turned out, through just a variety of fortuitous things, we end up where we are today with pretty much reaching all of our public funding goals, because it really was intended to be a third, a third, a third, a third in private fundraising, a third in state, local and state fundraising, and then another third in federal, and that's about where it turned out. We are, as Matt just went through, we have reached our goal, our fundraising goals for the lower reach, and so we are now really just waiting on the permitting process. I think for those of us that are in fundraising, I mean, I just go out and raise the money, and usually the project is able to sort of keep pace, and so this has been really an interesting and I would say an incredibly, this man is brilliant. Right here, because trying to manage all of these different agencies and this turned out to be a much more complicated and a much longer process than anybody ever imagined. And I think that if you look at other projects that are doing similar things in terms of just trying to restore the river to its natural state, they are running up against similar things, and some of those projects have taken more like 20 years. And so I think we're in a good place. We are going to be able, once we get the permits, we're going to be able to put the shovel in the water because we have raised the money. And so it is a good time for the project. So I just really wanted to thank you for your support, and as well, anything that you've done to support this project, we really truly appreciate it. And I think the numbers are low also on the edges, and I'll tell you why. Some of you are sitting on the Grand Rapids Public Museum. That project alone is in the neighborhood of $50 million. And we're also working on the fundraising for West Michigan Trails, which is doing the connector between on Ann from Riverside Park, and that project is 7 or 8 million. So just in those two projects, we're at 58 or close to 60 million. So those numbers are wildly low. And we continue to see, Canary Consulting, we continue to see things being proposed along the river that have both a public and a private. So it really has been fairly substantial. So I think, is there more? Oh, there's a schedule. Okay. Yeah.
I'll just quickly touch on the schedule, and of course the schedule here is obviously dependent on the ongoing permitting processes. So I know that we've probably adjusted this schedule many times over the years, but our goal, we're continuing to strive to be in the river for this lower reach to start some level of construction, whether that's the mussel relocation or actual dam removals by next summer. So that will be dependent on the process. Once we start that construction, it's likely going to be about a two-year or two-season construction window. Obviously, we have ice and things like weather that could affect that and add another year. And then once that is complete, then the Army Corps and the Fisheries Commission, while we're doing that construction, they will be wrapping up their permitting process, selecting that design of the upper reach. And then ideally that upper reach project would start sometime in 2025 or 2026 and run for however long the final project is for that design upstream. So any questions?
Questions today, Commissioner Bukowski.
Thank you for your continued hard work on this project. Two quick questions. Did I hear you, Matt, say Historical Preservation Society?
Yes, so in our consultation with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, because there's federal dollars, we were required to do a cultural resources survey. In that process and in consulting with the State Historic Preservation Office, it was determined that the 4 Lowhead dams are eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, just because of their age and the role that they played in the development and growth of the city. So we have, because the plan is to remove those structures, we've had to propose a mitigation plan essentially to outline what we would do to document their role in the history. So we've proposed things like having archaeologists on site, monitors will be taking photos of those dams to determine how they were constructed, what techniques were used at that point in time. Obviously, a part of this is documenting that history and coordinating with the public museum and making sure that there's signage and displays that can be curated in the future to tell that story.
Okay, and then speaking of history, what about the involvement and support and/or approval of the tribal nations? The Confederacy of Three Fires and the sacredness of this space and what we're going to be doing there?
It's a great point, and in fact, the tribes have been involved from the beginning and are largely supportive of the project. Ron Yob may put it best. He's the lead of the Grand River Band of the Ottawa Indians, and Ron said, he describes it as the rapids create. It's the earth releasing its spirit into the sky. It's that mist that comes off the rapids, and they've been with us and are very involved not only in the in-water work but the shoreline work. They would like to see some fire rings. They would like to see some other things. As you probably know, the parking lot south of the Ford Museum was a healing ground at one time, particularly for women in the tribe. So there's not only a respect for that, but we've embraced, that it's a big part of the project. Sturgeon's another issue. The fact that we may well be able to bring back a sturgeon fishery spawning ground means a great deal to the tribes. They describe the sturgeon as the equivalent of what the eagle is for the sky, the sturgeon is for water.
Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the updated report on where this is going. I'll confess that when I first heard about this project, I thought I would be coming into the office one morning and see a truck dumping some rocks into the river and maybe a couple of jackhammers pulling out a dam, and obviously it's a whole lot more than that. You haven't talked a lot about what the longer-term ongoing costs might be. I mean, once you get this implemented, I understand that there's a lot of construction, all the permitting, but then once it's done, I presume that it has to be monitored on an ongoing basis. And what's your projections on that?
First of all, your image isn't real wrong. I mean, it's about putting rock in the river and a jackhammer taking out the dams, but it's 220,000 ton of rock, and it's massive project. The ongoing maintenance, we're predicting the cost. They've estimated $300,000 to $500,000. We're not convinced it's going to be that much. Our designers who have done these projects throughout the country and Canada, similar projects, not the same, but they've not had, frankly, any maintenance. And part of the reason is they lock the work in so well, and they need to do that for safety purposes. It can't be floating around. We wouldn't meet the regulatory demands if in fact it was. So it gets locked in enough, and then it's designed so that the river actually locks it in further. So we don't expect that the maintenance of the in-river portion is going to be that substantial in cost. Regarding how it's going to be done, there is a group that Wayman was significantly involved with, and I assume Al may well be in the future, maybe now, but there's a group sort of designing what's the governance of this going to be. Is it going to be a recreational authority? Is it going to be a conservancy? What's it going to be? So there is work being done in that regard.
Yep. So, and then just my other question, if I might, is you talked about going downstream to the Millennium Park. Any thoughts on what's the implications for the next step involving that stretch of the river?
Really what I meant, this project ends at Fulton Street
Right.
and will kind of permanently. What I meant was, when you put these people in the river, where are they going to get out? What are they going to do? How are they going to approach the river? And we think that it's going to be very logical for people to make a day of Riverside to Millennial Park. And so they'll come through some quiet water, run through the run, and then go end up with that beautiful stretch from downtown to Millennium Park, and then take out at Millennium Park. That's certainly my own expectation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Antor.
Chair, good morning. Thank you for this report. I've always had some reservations about this, just based on the return on investment. I just could never really see how we can do any more than what we're possibly doing down in Grand Rapids. There's really literally no room to develop hardly unless you start tearing things down and so on and so forth. But a bigger concern has always been this stretch of river is considered today as one of the top 5 urban fisheries in the entire country, and that hasn't changed. I still can't wrap my arms around that and having canoes, kayaks, and inner tubes. They're not going to go together. And I know we can say some things, like you can do both, but you can't. That river right now expands across a great width where people can line up across the river, and they have room to move and move back as well. You can put a lot of fishermen in there. But if we're going to narrow it down for kayakers and, you know, create the rapids. There was talk about we have to take out the dangerous coffer dams. Well, I'd submit to you they're not nearly as dangerous as putting big rocks and encouraging people to float. It just isn't scoring in my mind. So I think it's gonna be more dangerous, but if people wanna do it, that's fine, it'd be fun. But I don't think the coffer dams are dangerous. I think it's a wonderful fishery, and I just hate to see that go away. I did talk to the folks down in Columbus, Georgia about their project. I talked to the Downtown Development or Convention and Visitors Bureau about the economic impact. I wasn't seeing those numbers. They said they do have people that will float the river now that never used to go back and forth. But talking about economic development, I didn't see that. And there's nothing we can do once this is done to reverse this. It is what it is, whether we get the economic, I hope you do. If we're gonna do all this, I hope this is everything you think it's gonna be. I don't wanna throw a wet blanket on this, but there is a cost to some quality of life. People love to fish down there. I just see that going away. I don't think you can do both, but I'll let you try to explain that. We are,
Happy to respond, and very happy to follow up too with a meeting if you'd like to get into more detail,
Well,
because I know our time's limited.
yeah, it is, and it may be beyond that point, because this is moving forward, but I just don't want people to think that this is necessarily gonna affect nobody in a negative way. It's gonna change things pretty radically. But the biggest concern I have is what's the actual economic development gonna be? I've never heard anybody tell me, boy, where's the rapids? I think,
So let me add three things. One, you mentioned the fishing, two, sort of the safety of it, and then three, the economic development. The fishing of it, we believe, and we've had, we have a great fish passage expert, and we're working with the DNR, of course, on this. We believe it'll be a better fishery when it's done than it is today, and it'll be a different fishery. So today, it is sort of this fish trapped in that hole in front of the 6th Street Dam, and everybody lines up. In the future, it might be fish behind every rock kind of thing, but spread out. And so in fact, we think that in addition to the jumping fish that we currently have, the salmon and steelhead that are planted, there'll also be a great fishery developed for walleye, for bass, and for suckers, and possibly for sturgeon. Not in my lifetime, but there may well be a sturgery fishery here someday. Because the spawning ground, there's 88 acres of spawning ground exposed if this project's done the way it's designed. The other thing is, there still will be a hole in front of a dam. The adjustable hydraulic structure proposed is up anytime the sea lamprey are spawning. And while it's up, it's the same access, it's the same kind of opportunity that that anglers have today. And the other thing about this, do you want me to go on the other
no,
two
I'd
points?
like to address
All right,
one thing.
all right.
You mentioned walleye. I grew up fishing that river in that stretch, and it's always been a good walleye. It remains a great walleye fishery in the fall. It's tremendous. We've caught some monsters off the Bridge Street Bridge, which is kind of a trick. When you get a walleye and you're on a bridge, there's a whole system. There's people that have to go down and net it for you. It's all the locals know how to do it, but it's always been good fishing for just about everything, including suckers and carp. You never know what you're going to catch. But I'm not trying, again, I want to try to kind of level the expectations on economic development for one. I continue to question what adding some rocks to the river. I think that'll be kind of cool for a while, and I don't know if that's always going to be a big draw. But this is a done deal. We're moving forward. We can't go back and redo this again. And maybe, I'm not saying that, but I just want the expectations to be a little bit more reasonable based on some of these other projects. What I would like to talk about is some of these other projects where they've done this before and look exactly at what type of economic development is spurred. So we can learn from it in case we decide to do something else. So, I'm not buying all of your points.
And again,
It's the way I'm
happy to
wired.
follow up, but if I can very, very quickly, so on the safety issue, having the designed kind of amenities that create whitewater help make it safe. They're designed so that right behind it is a quiet pool.
Right.
So if you stumble, fall through it, you basically can stand up and be okay, and then there's also going to be access on the shoreline nearby. That's why we're such a strong advocate of these engineered amenities.
I understand
yeah,
that,
if we
but you
just
got to
do-
be pretty good to navigate true whitewater. You can't just go out there and,
It's true, and it's also not going to be ferocious. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But the second thing is the river is quite wide, as you point out, and so we believe there is room in the river for multiple uses.
Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate all this work, and I know it's been an ongoing thing. I think at the very beginning, we had a couple young men, they said it was gonna be between $4 and $8 million probably. And we all knew that wasn't realistic, but I know how much work this is. And getting the money you've gotten is amazing. So obviously, people have bought into it, and I hope you all the best. I wanted to point out, let's make sure we stay realistic. Hopefully, you're right and I'm wrong.
We have a couple more commissioners that have quick. Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. I've been a big fan of this from the beginning, and I'm really excited about it. And having been on a parks tour where, on a very small scale, we restored natural edges to a waterway, it helps me imagine this, and I really feel like it's the right thing to do. Also, the dams reflected one economic reality. Our future is something different, and I really think that this is the best for our tourism and also as an amenity for people we hope to attract who want to live here. My question is about, and it partly goes back to Commissioner Steck's question about maintenance, but when we're talking about this seasonal hydraulic structure, that sounds like something that might require maintenance. Can you explain that again, exactly what it's going to do? And is it definitely going in? Is it maybe going in?
Right, so that's part of that upper reach process, and again, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission is leading that. The Army Corps of Engineers has been contracted to evaluate 15 different design options. So the adjustable structure is one of them. They're talking about options like even repairing the existing structure, potentially building another static concrete dam like what we have in the river today. So the ongoing maintenance costs will be considered as part of their evaluation for all of that. Obviously, anytime you introduce a new adjustable structure, you're absolutely right. There would be some maintenance for that. So the in-stream features, as Steve mentioned, in the river are really designed, the rocks, the boulders, are designed to put in place and stay there, very little maintenance costs. But the upstream, whatever lamprey barrier would be selected, that would have to have some sort of ongoing long-term maintenance plan. The Fishery Commission has received federal dollars. They get an annual appropriation through the federal government for managing lamprey in the Great Lakes. They have an appropriation right now in their base budget to help with this project and to fund this that could continue and transform into that operations and maintenance fund if needed.
Fantastic, thank you.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, it's great to see two former board chairs that I had the opportunity to serve with, the privilege to serve with. But I guess my hook in this was the restoration. And I have to tell my colleagues that we're just really known for our due diligence. And, you know, this has been pretty fluid because when you're dealing with so many government agencies, you never know where the costs are going to go and what the demands are. But, you know, I don't get excited about much. But I have to tell you, I think this could be just a really great project for the county and the city of Grand Rapids if it's done correctly, and I know it will be. I can see a lot of folks utilizing that river that's just being mostly taken for granted right now, and it's just a great natural resource for us to develop. And so I wish you all the luck in the world in doing this, because you have to be lucky sometimes along with that. But just navigating all the bureaucracy and getting where we are has been kind of, you know, mind-blowing to me. But, hey, I think we're on a track, and I'd like to see it completed.
Any other questions today? Oh, Commissioner Wooden and then
Thank you, Chair. In light of the past comments about economic impact, because I'll admit, I often am a little leery when I hear economic impact analyses because we've heard so many and some work and some don't. Could you talk a little bit about how this might tie into the Build Back Better Challenge? I know you've been here before to talk about tourism as an industry, both from the manufacturing side and from an attraction side as an economic engine. And could you talk about how this project and those complement each other and might tie into each other?
We've been talking a lot today about what's going to happen in the river. You know, that it's going to be one of the primary places in the Midwest for kayakers, and so we'll attract that. But there's also what happens on the edges. So in the development that's being used to connect the trails, I don't know how many of you use the trails regularly, but I can tell you I'm on them pretty regularly because I hike, bike, run, walk, whatever I can do to be on the trails. And when you go to a community where there's like South Bend or Tulsa, where there's a trail all along the river, it is packed. because it brings in people that see that amenity, and there's nothing like walking or riding on the river through Riverside Park or in Millennium Park. I mean, there's just really nothing like it. And so more and more people will be attracted to that as we grow that. So I know that the economic impact study that was done in 2014 was specific to that, to the kayakers, but I think there's what we have seen, Canary has seen in other places, has been an incredible explosion of things along the river. And even though we might not look at the public museums project as economic impact, when you think about the numbers that it brings into the museum now, in excess of 200,000, and if this will jump their numbers significantly, those are people coming in from out of town, heads and beds and all of that stuff. So the economic engine, I think, goes well beyond what is even in these projections. It looks different than just people coming in to use the river, I think. Did I answer all your question? You had more to that. Was there more to that question?
Well, no, I think that answers most of it. I appreciated some of the presentations that folks from Canary have given on Build Back Better, the Build Back Better Challenge, not the Act, and not just how it'll help attract people, but also the manufacturing side of that too, and just wanted to hear more about how the challenge itself, if we're able to get an award, could complement with this project.
Well, I mean, this is key because that's a waterways, you know, so this is sort of the linchpin. So yes, if we're able to secure that, I mean, the role that the river will play in that is massive.
Fantastic, thank you.
Commissioner Womack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I totally support this, just traveling and having a chance to see that. Sometimes I travel just to go to cities to have a better view of the water, more activities surrounding the water. So I'm very experienced with the economic impact that this can have on the city of Grand Rapids. So I do support it. One of my questions would be, would it expose us to more invasive species such as Asian carp, and what are the studies on our environmental issues?
That's a great question. And from everything we're told from the agencies we're working with, and we have 7 agencies we need to appease and get approval from, including the state agencies, primarily Eagle, but also DNR. They're focused on Asian carp in particular, but invasives altogether. And their view of our project has had that in mind. So they will not let us do anything that would increase the risk for invasives.
Okay, and my last question, has our drain commissioner Kent County Drain Commissioner been engaged in this yet? I don't know if it's to that process yet, but enough for us to begin to get reports from him on the impact on flooding or the opportunity while this is being built for us to do things to make sure we have less flooding in the city of Grand Rapids and here in Kent County.
That's a great question and a great point. No, we've not done that, and we will. It's a great suggestion, and one we'll take up on.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions today? I just have one, wondering for public comment, how are we getting the word out to people and really engaging the community?
Yeah, great question. For the current one that is open, again, the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, they're the lead federal agency, so they're really kind of initiating that. They did send out a press release that was very well attended by the local media. I think almost all of the local TV stations picked up on that. The city, Grand Rapids, Whitewater, and the Grand Valley Metro Council have amplified that voice by sharing that out on our local social media and our websites and feeds, but also talking to a number of our local project partners and different organizations. So we will continue to do that. We actually were just discussing the other day just kind of some lessons that we learned through this first one. Again, we have more of these coming up, so we'll continue to make sure that those voices are heard.
I think we would probably want to include ourselves in helping you get the word out as well, so.
If I can add one more thing to that too, the Clean Water Action is a nonprofit organization that has received some funding to help amplify the voices as well. They've done some surveys of over 10,000 residents. They will continue to engage with us in that as well. So,
great. Well, I want to thank Steve, Sandy, and Matt for coming. I know this was an obligation of our commitment to the funding was to give us a report, so we really appreciate that, and great to see progress being made, so we really appreciate you coming, and thank you guys. All right, we are on to item 6, public comment related to the agenda only. Do we have any public comment regarding our agenda today? Come on up. You have 3 minutes. Give us
Hi, Dwayne, American citizen. I wanted to ask these folks, was there any mention, sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't hear any mention of the existing fish ladder and what's going to happen with that.
We'll have to get that for you. We don't do a typical exchange back and forth. Yep. Any other public comment related to the agenda today? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, consent agenda. I'd like to call on Commissioner Green for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the consent agenda of today's date.
Moved by Commissioner Green, support by Commissioner Morgan. Questions or comments on the consent agenda today? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioners Green,
Yes.
Antor,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck,
Yes.
Oops.
Burl,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Breavy,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Sparks, McLeod,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
LeGrand,
Yes.
Bulkowski,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Wonderful. We are on to a slew of resolutions today, so I would like to first call on Commissioner Breavy.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I move Resolution 110 of today's date, Interurban Transit Partnership Program for 2021-2022 from Kent County Community Action.
Moved by Commissioner Breavy, support by Commissioner
Support.
Wooden. Questions or comments on Resolution 110 today? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 110, Commissioners Green,
Yes.
Antor, Morgan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck,
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein, Burl,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Breavy,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Sparks, McLeod, Hennessy,
Yes.
LeGrand,
Yes.
Bulkowski,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Skaggs, Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 110 is adopted.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Commissioner Bulkowski for a motion for 8B of our agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I move Resolution 111 of today's date, the Refugee Screening Grant Amendment from the Health Department.
Moved by Commissioner Bulkowski, support by Commissioner
Support.
Sparks. Questions or comments on Resolution 111 today? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question. So, in reading through this, it appears that this grant is to support the initial exams and vaccinations. And I just had a question. So there are referrals for primary care for things that may, that the families, the refugees may need after the initial examination. So does this grant cover those costs, or how will that be covered?
Welcome, Joanne from the Health Department. How are you?
Yes, thank you for your question, and apologize for my cold-ridden voice here. I don't always sound this way. That's a very good question, because the incoming refugees from Afghanistan are not automatically enrolled in Medicaid, as are most of our refugees. And so the question does come, until they get employed, and they're supposed to try to get employed within 3 months of arrival, how will their medical expenses be covered? And we did a very loud shout out to the community agencies such as Spectrum Health, Cherry Health, Mercy, and Metro, University of Michigan West. And they have all stepped up, and they have offered care for, especially specialty care. So for if someone arrives and has a cardiac condition or has tuberculosis or another medical need that requires specialty care, these agencies have accepted the responsibility to provide care at no cost.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions today? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 111, Commissioners Green,
Yes.
Antor,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck,
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein, Burl,
Yes.
Coleman,
Yes.
Breavy,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Sparks, McLeod, Hennessy, LeGrand,
Yes.
Bulkowski,
Yes.
Womack,
Yes.
Wooden,
Yes.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 111 is adopted.
All right, we are on to 8C, and I'd like to call on Commissioner Sparks for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move
Moved by Commissioner
Support.
Sparks, support by Commissioner McLeod. Questions or comments on 112 today?
I have a question.
Yep.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Chair. So this sounds like a great program, and I just had a couple questions, I guess, in terms of kind of how, it sounds like, for lack of better words, a Meals on Wheels type program for the refugee families. So I'd like some clarification on that. But then two,
3 years.
I guess I'm not understanding why the meals are pre-prepared and individually, as opposed to giving the families like money to buy their own food. Like, why are we doing it this way?
Hi, can you give us your name or
Sure.
introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rachel Kunith. I'm the program manager that's overseeing that program at Kent County Community Action. Yes, the meals are pre-cooked, individually packaged and frozen to be reheated. And the reason for that model is that the intent is to be able to support those individuals and families as they're temporarily housed in hotel housing that may not have access to kitchen and cooking facilities. Each family and individual is supported by a resettlement agency in Grand Rapids, and so they're not all headed towards hotels. Some of them do go to living arrangements that have the ability to cook, and in those situations, they are able to source their own materials. But, so this is just a short-term solution. Typically, when they first arrived, if there is no more appropriate long-term housing identified, to just provide that support for them while they're in the hotels.
Thanks for that clarification. That's really helpful. And so then for the 350 families, we're looking at about $942 per family. And so how long would that particularly, how long are you anticipating that this food assistance would cover the temporary housing, the temporary food needs while they're in temporary housing facilities?
Yeah, so each family and individual kind of has their own path, and so some move their way into more suitable long-term housing quicker than others. But the entire initiative is pretty short-term. I'm expecting that it will wrap up really by the end of this year or maybe into early next year, because the arrivals are expected to be happening over the next couple of weeks. Excuse me. The grant goes through September 30th of 22, but I don't anticipate that we'll be involved in that long, because once they're settled, it's hopefully just a really short-term solution. It's not really ideal for long-term sustenance, and we want to be able to get them kind of into their normal routines and everyday life as quickly as possible. So we're providing those meals through the resettlement agencies, and they're monitoring what the needs are at the individual level. And so we're really just partnering at that level, and the resettlement agencies determine what the day-to-day and long-term need is.
Great, thank you.
Any
Thank you,
other
Chair.
questions today? All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 112, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor. Morgan. Jones.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Breavy. Teal.
Yes.
Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy. LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Womack. Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 112 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We are on to 8D, and I would like again to call in Commissioner Breavy.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I move Resolution 113 of today's date, senior millage allocations for 2022 from the Administrator's Office.
Moved by Commissioner Breavy, support by Commissioner Hennessy. Questions or comments on Resolution 113 today? Commissioner Bulkowski.
Just as a note, I'm going to abstain from this motion and the next, as my employer, Disability Advocates, receives a senior millage allocation, and we are the NACO disability provider.
Perfect. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I just want to, I see that Kendrick is here in the audience. I certainly want to acknowledge him for stepping in. Many of you may not know that, but this is his first year managing the senior millage allocation process, and he stepped in late in the game and did an excellent job, and so certainly thank you for that. And those of us that have sat on that committee and worked with you, we appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner Steck. I'm Kendrick Heinlein, Director of Contract Services at the Area Agency on Aging. Been with the agency for 5 years, been in this role for about 2 months, so it's been a great process. We appreciate the support from everybody and look forward to working with you in the future.
Great. Any other questions today? Commissioner Hennessy and then Commissioner Morgan.
I get to follow Carol.
I'll take the thunder from you.
Okay.
I do appreciate this process. I've been involved, Roger was just asking me how many years, and I'm not even sure, 13 or 14 years. But this process, it does not stay in place. It's a very dynamic process that looks carefully at where we've been, where we're going, what is needed, takes very careful measure of who is being served and that we're getting the services out correctly. And meet with all these agencies like disability advocates and give them a hard time from year to year.
And you should.
So I do appreciate how you stepped in and ran a very smooth, good process this year. We ran it both, in person and virtually, and it was really well done. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Commissioner Hennessy.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you. She did take some of my thunder, but I just want to talk a little bit, like I always do, about this process. This process has been utilized by the county for many, many years, even though Commissioner Coleman brings the median age way down on that committee. It's a great process to work with the area, on the aging and to get this done. It's been a pretty smooth process, and I hope it kind of continues in the future, so.
Any other questions today? All right, well, thank you for being here. We welcome you and appreciate all your work. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 113, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor. Yes. Morgan.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Breeby.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Sparks. McLeod.
Yes.
Hennessy.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Abstain.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 17 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. The motion passes. Resolution 113 is adopted.
All right, we are on to 8E, and I will again call on Commissioner Breeby for a motion.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I move Resolution 114 of today's date, National Association of County and City Health Officials, NACHO, addressing needs of people with disabilities in COVID-19 planning, mitigation, and recovery efforts from the Health Department.
Moved by Commissioner Breeby.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Morgan. Questions or comments on Nacho? All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 114, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor. Morgan.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl. Coleman.
Yes.
Breeby.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Abstain.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 17 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. The motion passes. Resolution 114 is adopted.
Wonderful.
So does that mean this is Nacho Thursday?
Maybe. All right, we are on to 8F, and I would like to call on Commissioner Wooden for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is my pleasure to move Resolution 115 of today's date. It is to accept the Ready by 5 Early Childhood Millage Services Fetal Infant Mortality Review Grant. It comes to us from the Health Department.
Moved by Commissioner Wooden, support by Commissioner Breeby. Questions or comments on Resolution 115 today? All right, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 115, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor. Morgan.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl.
Yes.
Coleman.
Yes.
Breeby.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy. LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 115 is adopted.
All right, we have two more resolutions today. I'd like to call on Commissioner Womack for a motion on 8G.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move motion 116 of today's date, 11/18/21, the Lakeshore Regional Entity COVID-19 Block Grant Supplemental from our Health Department.
Moved by Commissioner Womack, support by Commissioner Sparks. Questions or comments on Resolution 116 today? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 116, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor. Morgan. Jones.
Yes.
Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl. Coleman. Breeby. Teal.
Yes.
Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy. LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Womack. Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 116 is adopted.
All right, we are on our last resolution, 8H. Now again, calling Commissioner Breeby.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I move Resolution 117 of today's date, the 2022 General Appropriation Act from the Administrator's Office. Support.
Moved by Commissioner Breeby, support by Commissioner Jones. Questions or comments on 117 today? Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. Just wanted to thank administration, staff, fellow commissioners. This is always a long process. It's a detailed process. I'd like the public to know that even though there might be not as much discussion that you might see here, there is many, many hours of discussion that led up to this document. And we are just such a fortunate county to be in the position that we are to deliver the services that we can through our budget process. And what a great example of working together in a bipartisan manner for the needs of our county. Thank you.
Any other comments today? All right, I just want to commend Chair Jones on another good budget process. So with that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the motion to adopt Resolution 117, Commissioners Green.
Yes.
Antor.
Yes.
Morgan. Jones. Vice Chair Steck.
Yes.
Commissioners Ponstein. Burl. Coleman. Breeby. Teal. Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy. LeGrand.
Yes.
Bulkowski.
Yes.
Womack. Wooden.
Yes.
Skaggs.
Yes.
Chair Bolter.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 18 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. Resolution 117 is adopted.
All right, we are on to item 9 of our agenda, public comment related to general county matters. Anyone wishing to speak? We have 3 minutes. Give us your name and address. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the administrator's report today, item 10. Al?
Thank you. I have a few items today. In early January, we'll be launching local unit quadrant meetings, we call them. This is a map. I'd pass it out, but there'll be some arm wrestling over where Rockford ends up, which quadrant. So we'll get that resolved, and then I'll provide the map. But basically, it's an attempt to bring the city, village, township, and county leaders together. And the agenda will look like this. The county will make a presentation. The host community, there will be a different host community each time. These will happen twice a year in 4 quadrants of the county, so 8 meetings. And it's just a chance, I think, for us to build more camaraderie, because we're public servants, we're all in this together, and we can do more as far as collaborating with each other, creating win-win partnerships. And so commissioners are welcome to attend those meetings. And then we'll also, the agenda will include the county presenting something, maybe introducing some officials that local units haven't had a chance to meet, and then hearing some from the local units, and then discussing possible partnerships. And so I've done it before here, and then it stopped for some reason, and I've also done that in Ottawa. It's been a good tool just to bring us together more. Second, I know there's probably questions, where are we at with ARPA? Well, the board did make the initial $10 million allocation of funds, and we will be bringing back requests within that $10 million of things that we believe are more imminent and should be resolved sooner. We'll also be bringing a recommendation to utilize the consultant services to help with the allocation process, the public involvement process, stakeholder process, and then maybe even more importantly, at the end of all this, the regulation and reporting and accounting for ARPA is far more enhanced than CARES Act, and so that will be a big lift. Also, the rules also changed this week for ARPA, earlier this week, so we got to get a grip on that. And then also, I think basically it expanded maybe what the money can be used for, is all I've heard so far. And then also, of course, we have the new transportation funding. And we did receive an update from our federal lobbyist, Steve Carey, and just have some very broad brush information on what that applies to as far as roads and bridges and some other things, broadband. And we'll be providing more information as we get more information on that. But importantly, there very well may be some areas where we'll spend money through the federal transportation bill that we won't need to spend money through ARPA. So I think this is all coming together at the right time. The other thing the consultant would be responsible for is keeping track of all the different pots of state and federal dollars so that we can maximize the $127 million and change that we have for ARPA. So it's obviously very complex. I think that if you remember with CARES Act money, the message was spend it right away, spend it as fast as you can, get it circulating in the economy. The message on ARPA is to make transformational investments, to use the money in a way that it keeps paying off into the future, a strong ripple effect. So I think that'll be a strong focus as we look at the allocation process. And of course, you know, the board will have input in that, our stakeholders in the community will have input in that. And so we'll probably hit that hot and heavy early next year. I would like to introduce a couple of our new staff. So Lisa Ampolsky, raise your hand, Lisa. And she is a senior administrative specialist in the board office, so she's helping Kaylee. And then we also have Jessica Harris. Jessica, raise your hand. She joins the administrator's office as a management analyst. And so those are a couple faces you'll be seeing quite a bit around the county offices. I did just also want to mention, since it was a topic on the agenda today, that the board had agreed to invest $1.4 million into the Whitewater project, and so far you've spent $500,000. And so, as many of you will recall, but I know we have some new commissioners too, there were 3 benchmarks at which they would be able to draw down the money. The next benchmark would be when there's more than $500,000 spent on construction. And obviously, with the Eagle and DNR, the permit process, that has been delayed significantly. So it'll probably be a while, but we'll see those draws when the project gets to that point. I did also just want to mention that we are keeping close track. Mike Fortin, our data scientist, provides all of us a lot of great data on where we're at with COVID, and obviously we know the numbers are about as bad as they've been, except for the worst point in the first round or the first year of COVID. And so, you know, our positivity rate is over 21% in Kent County. Our hospitals are full, and we're also keeping close track of COVID cases within our county workforce. It's a weird time because we had a lot of direction at one point, and where everybody was doing some things, I think, for the good of the order, depending on your opinion. But at this point, it's just really scattered, some of the responses and strategies and that type of thing. So we're just keeping our eyes on the data, and we'll take, I think, appropriate action when we need to. But at this point, I have nothing to announce as far as a change there. And that's it for today.
All right, thanks, Al. All right, we are on to official commissioner reports. Do we have official reports today? Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I just wanted to let everyone know that the township supervisors met this past month for a change, not a specific speaker. Instead, they had more of a roundtable discussion, which spent quite a bit of time talking about the ARPA funds and other local issues that had a nice opportunity for brainstorming. Next month, we have our own county administrator and Dar from the DPW coming, and they're very much looking forward to that. I suggested to the chair of that group, he just might want to add a little extra time to that meeting.
Commissioner Breavy?
Thank you, Chair Bolter. I have 3 reports, so stick with me. The first one comes from the Sports Commission, and Commissioner Jones and I met with our colleagues on the board there earlier this week. And there's lots of exciting things happening. Sports, bringing teams in from outside the area has really come back close to 2019 levels, especially the outdoor sports like softball and baseball and tennis. So, that's looking really good, and we're looking at making some improvements to the Meyer Sports Complex, formerly known as the Art Van Sports Complex, and that we would be adding some more softball and baseball and possibly pickleball. So we're in the works on just kind of getting started and possibly looking at what type of fundraising would be required, and Sandy is actually working with us on that. But there's lots of exciting things happening. It's definitely a gem in our community, and people like coming here to West Michigan. And we still have room in the park to make those improvements. So that's from the Sports Commission. The next one would be from Department of Public Works. We're working on our new office building there. It's coming close to being complete. And with that comes recycling drop-off. That has been closed for the last several months because it hasn't been safe to have residential traffic come through there with construction traffic and commercial drop-off. So they're working on making some alterations to the current recycling building, so residents could come curbside, drop off their items, and it would go right into the recycling center and go right into the line of getting filtered out into the appropriate bins. So that's something exciting. I think a lot of residents that use that drop-off facility in the area will be pleased to hear that. It's still not open to residential drop-off, but we're working on that. The next thing would be from the airport. Lots of good stuff to report from the airport. With holiday travel right around the corner here, we're looking at getting close to our 2019 numbers, which is huge after suffering with such low numbers during the pandemic. And so things are really looking good. And one thing too, Jeff, I don't know if you'd like to speak to this. I appreciate your expertise when it comes to the bond stuff, but the airport went to market with their bonds and they saved a significant amount of money. And there's lots of excitement too in the market. I don't know if you want to just hit on that in your perspective. But these would be the bonds that we just approved by the board for the Concourse A expansion.
Yeah, good morning. So they weren't quite sure what to expect given the uncertainties in the market, but I believe they were about 10 times oversold, which means we've had about $96 million to sell, and we had orders for over $1 billion on this sale. So we were able to lower all of the maturity returns in each and every year. So I think it was just over 3% final tick on the 30-year money. So
yeah,
very good sale.
It was a savings too of over like $2 million. So the airport's looking like it's in good hands. And one thing too about the air traffic control tower. So with the infrastructure bill, there was about $15 billion dedicated to airport improvements. So we're really looking in a positive direction to having the FAA work with us in replacing that air traffic control tower, which is much needed for the future of the airport. And there's no better time than this. We've been working with Congressman Meyer's office, and he's been very helpful in the whole process. So things are looking good for that improvement. And then one thing too that we are working on over in the next, 5 to 10 years, there's about $500 million in capital improvement projects that are going on at the airport. So it's not going to be your little Kent County airport. It's definitely a bright spot in the sky there. So thanks for all your work, and if you want to talk to Commissioner Morgan and I more about it, we'd be happy to share all the good news. So,
Commissioner Morgan,
thanks.
I couldn't tell if you wanted to speak or if she stole your thunder.
Oh, no, this is a
The
different
ladies on
report.
each side of you are stealing. Okay, go for it.
You have those days.
You have those days.
Everybody knows I sit on the Dispatch Authority, and as I mentioned at the Finance Committee, we've built out our towers. This 800 system is up and operating, and it's working better than I expected. It's just given us an opportunity for all these agencies to be able to communicate with one another, and it's come a long way since I first got involved with Central Dispatch philosophy back in 1987. So that's how long it's taken us to get to this point. But we're going to have to make some decisions here pretty soon. And I just want to extend, if I may, through the chair, the opportunity for the sheriff to come and kind of give us an update on this. And because she operates the county side, we have two separate dispatches yet, one with the city and one with the county, which can be a little bit of a challenge because they're not consolidated. But so we're going to be looking forward to the future, and if the sheriff would be so kind at some time in the future to come and just give us an overview. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, Sheriff, but no, not
No,
today. No,
not today.
Gosh, no, it's far too complicated for you just to get up and wing it. But in the future, if she could give us just a little overview where we are and
That'd be good.
where she'd like to go. Thank you.
Yeah, and I meant to mention with Commissioner Breevy's report that, just to clarify, that's the second oldest tower in the nation, correct? And it's, yes, so, anyway, we really need it, really need it. Commissioner LeGrand.
Thank you, Chair. The Grand Valley Metro Council Transportation Policy Committee met yesterday, and one thing, a big order of business was to adopt the state safety standards. So we had a resolution for that. This might be interesting to you is that one resource that we have on that website is an interactive map. So if you have constituents who are concerned about safety, it's a really great resource you can look up incidents, you can look it up by time of day, you can look up traffic conditions, you can look up not sure about property damage, but you can look up injury, death, pedestrian involvement, bike involvement. So it's a really great resource. If some of you in your corner of the county might have concerns about this sort of traffic safety. So I'm going to ask Kaylee to send out a link to that and just explain how it works, because I thought it might be of interest. Thank you.
Very cool. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Bolter. First, an observation. I'm not sure that having our air traffic control tower on the historic registry is a good thing, but we'll see. Maybe there's money associated. So I have a couple of reports otherwise. The Behavioral Health Crisis Response Advisory Team continues to meet on a regular basis, and what we're doing is sort of keeping track of the progress on the numerous issues and initiatives that we have been pursuing across the county in order to improve our behavioral health crisis response across the county. So those initiatives are moving forward in many cases, and I think that they're very positive. I'm looking forward to having some opportunity to hear more reports on that, but everything is moving in the good direction. So that's my good report. The Lakeshore Regional Entity, in fact, I'll be leaving here as soon as we're done here to head out for a number of meetings there. I've reported last time that the pending litigation with the state is reactivating and moving in a direction that's less than admirable. That's just going to be a big problem for us. There will be a number of significant decisions that we make today on what we're going to do in response to that. I won't go into a lot of the detail, but encourage particularly if you hear things through the media based upon those decisions, reach out to me and ask me. I'd be more than happy to share that information. And then finally, Network 180, I just want to give you a heads up. There's so much conversation today about vaccination mandates. We know all about the OSHA mandates coming down. Many of you may not know that there are also vaccination mandates being issued by the federal government relative to Medicaid providers. Those are, as far as we know, still moving forward, and so in the course of December 5 or 4 through January 4, we will be wrestling with that at Network 180. It has a lot of complications and issues for retaining our staff, a staffing process that is already severely challenged. But right now, we're not aware of there being any reprieve on that, so stay tuned. We're going to have to wrestle with some very difficult issues on that.
Again, I say this every time, but I'm glad you're doing all of that work at LRE and Network 180, so thank you for that work. Any other official reports today? I just have one from the CAA, good news. The first quarter, they are up $500,000 more than they expected, and they do have their fund balance back up to $22 million. So that was through the course of a couple big SBA grants and some staffing cuts and various measures they took. So that is good news. And heads up, you probably will be hearing from them. We probably will be doing some informal meetings with the CAA in the next few weeks. So with that, Al forgot one thing he wanted to
One thing
message.
off my list. I just wanted to make sure I thanked everyone for their participation in the budget process. Commissioner Jones really kind of dug into it and did a great job, I think, leading from a board perspective. Also staff, I mean, Jeff and Marvin, one thing we don't worry about at Kent County is accurate numbers and outstanding financial analysis and also their staff. I mean, if I thanked everyone that had a hand in this, we'd be here the rest of the morning, but truly it was a great team effort. A little bumpy with me coming in more later in the process, and we'll look forward to a little bit smoother ride next year.
All right. Okay, we're on to miscellaneous. I want to remind members, we have 2 shots at 5 minutes each if you'd like to speak, but direct your comments to the chair. And do we have any commissioner miscellaneous today? Commissioner Breivy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share and commend South Christian High School, their boys soccer team. They are the Division III state champions. And there's other members on the board that constantly gloat about their schools. And so I just wanted to gloat about my alma mater and congratulate South Christian. So thanks.
Thanks. Commissioner Womack.
Yes, just want to say, ask everyone to keep Commissioner Poinstein seriously in your prayers and any support we can give to him during his time of losing his mother and also going through some a medical situation himself. Just make sure we keep him prayed up. And also thank Kent County for its participation in the NAACP awards this year. Thank Chair Bolter for making sure once they reach out to me that we got with Al and everybody and got tickets, and thank our inclusion officer for coordinating it so well, Teresa Branson, and just all the commissioners, Skaggs, Bukowski, Hennessy, and everybody that came out to it, especially Al Vandenberg, who didn't have any problem introducing himself to everybody in the room. Al was having so much fun, looking like a little kid going around that room, meeting everybody. I was just watching him, enjoying myself. But Wayman Britt was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it just showed just how much the community respects our former administrator support, but also the support that Kent County has given the community. So it was a big night for Kent County at the NAACP Awards.
Thank you, Commissioner Womack. You stole my thunder about Commissioner Ponstein, so we do wish him a speedy recovery and our prayers for him and his family as well. Any other miscellaneous? Commissioner Bukowski?
Yeah, just real quick, kind of following up on Commissioner Antor's comment in the Whitewater piece related to the development in the river and what have you. The city of Grand Rapids is kicking off its master plan process, last done 20+ years ago. And I know you all have too much fun in your township and other municipality master planning processes, but since Grand Rapids does have an impact on all of us, I hope we'll be kept informed. So just a heads up, that's starting. It's like a 2-year process. But anyways, as Commissioner Antor pointed out, all the parts are connected, and you touch one, we got to make sure how we're touching everybody else. So.
No touching. Commissioner Skaggs.
I feel as if I must respond to the gloating comments by gloating. From the District 19 District of Champions, a District of Champions. Boys Soccer Division II, Grand Rapids Christian is your state champions this year. Congratulations to coaches, players, and parents.
All right, Commissioner Jones.
Sure, I'll keep jumping on that bandwagon because Rockford High School Marching Band is a state champion. They also had an announcement that I think is phenomenal for all of us to know, but in 2023, they will be participating in the Rose Parade. So that is a huge take on for them. They also have been to the Macy's Day Parade, and this will be another feather in their cap of accomplishments to be in the Rose Parade in 2023.
That's Division 1, right?
And in Division 4.
Any other miscellaneous today? I don't know if I was supposed to announce this in reports or miscellaneous, but you did get an email about kicking off those two subcommittees. One for Veterans Review, Millage Review, which will be chaired by Commissioner Burrow, and one on Judiciary Review, chaired by Commissioner Teal. Those are to look at, we had a recommendation from Scale that we need more judges. We're going to review that and make a recommendation to the board. So those will probably come to you next year. New leadership will have to reappoint those so that we can continue that. Also, our Veterans Millage Review will look at allowable use of that millage, those millage funds. They have lapsed a couple times, so we want to make sure we're addressing all the needs of our veterans, and so that will be occurring as well. So with that, if we have no other miscellaneous, I'd call on Commissioner Green for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to wish everyone a safe, restful, and happy Thanksgiving, and I move to adjourn, subject to the call of the chair, to Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, at 8:30 a.m. for an official meeting.
Moved by Commissioner Green, support by Commissioner Morgan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.